Welcome to Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, straight from the Bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
They blew up Coal River Mountain and everything inside came rushing to the valley like children down a slide. And everyone got paid right before they died.
Hello, my name is Liz Wolfe.
And I'm Mike Wilner.
Welcome to Season 4, Episode 3, where I interview the legendary, the amazing, the one and only Missy Raines.
What an incredible musician and what a personality we have in our bluegrass community.
I had such a wonderful time speaking with her, so full of knowledge, so experienced, so many insights, and I can't wait for you to hear it.
Yep. And we're also going to have a little bit of jam talk where Liz and I are going to talk about some of our favorite songs to call in jams.
Yes, and I'm sure you know I have an opinion.
And me too. So Liz, what's going on with you?
Well, everybody's been waiting for this big moment, which is that, yes, Jam Jersey tickets are now on sale. Go to jamjersey.com and you can buy your ticket. Early bird tickets right now are open. And if you're going to stay at the hotel, I recommend you make your reservation because the rooms are going fast.
Yeah, they sell out. I know last year I barely got in under the wire and I got my ticket early too.
And what are you up to?
Well, I'm looking forward to this Sunday, November 23rd, when A.J. Lee and East Nash Grass are both going to be performing at the Music Hall of Williamsburg here in the Bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York. That's going to be at 8 p.m. We'll put that information in the program notes, and I hope some of our listeners will join us there.
Yes, I will be there, and I cannot wait. I love A.J. Lee and East Nash Grass.
Yep, some of my favorite bands. But don't forget to follow us at Bluegrass Brooklyn. Brooklyn is spelled B-K-L-Y-N. You can visit us at bluegrassbrooklyn.com. You can see our Facebook group called Bluegrass Brooklyn. And if you're looking for jams in Uptown Manhattan, the Bronx, and now even New Jersey, go to bluegrassjamsnearme.com.
That's right.
By the way, our intro music was Cold Black Water by Missy Raines from her Love and Trouble album. So are we ready to go, Liz?
Yes, we are. And let's do it.
All right, let's roll.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I have a very special guest on, Missy Raines, the bass player of fame and the veteran of the bluegrass world. And of course, the big thing always being the first woman bass player of the year. So welcome, Missy.
Well, thank you. So great to be here.
Yeah, so bass playing. Why be a bass player? I guess that'd be my first question.
You know, I didn't think about it that way because I was 10 years old or 11 when I started playing. So, of course, that concept of choosing something, it was just like it was in the house and I was already playing guitar and I'd been playing piano and music was really pretty much all I thought of. Once I started playing bass, I didn't think about the guitar as much. I didn't think about piano anymore. And that sort of just made me think, oh, there's something here. So I really enjoyed the way I felt when I was playing bass with other players. In those days, it was just all jams, either festival jams or neighbors' houses jams in the wintertime when we couldn't go to festivals. My folks were bluegrass enthusiasts. They were already going to see live shows before I was born, or mostly like early country and early bluegrass. Just live shows locally, regionally. They didn't travel too far, but they might, travel an hour or 2 hours away from our home base and continued that once I was the last of 4 children. So we kept doing all of that. But yeah, so I was surrounded by bluegrass and that was my first love.
And this was other members of your family also playing? Were you the main person playing? What was the dynamic there?
I have 2 brothers and a sister, and none of them actually played. Well, my one brother played piano, but he played mostly classical, and nobody else really played. My parents didn't play, but then my dad did buy the bass for himself, like the one bass that I actually am playing today. So he was wanting to participate with the jamming that was happening and had been playing a washtub bass that he had built for himself. And I think at one point they all looked at him and said, well, if you really want to be serious, you should buy an actual instrument. He went out and bought a bass, and he actually bought a really great bass. And he didn't know that. Of course, none of us did. He brought it home and then the rest.
So you were playing a full-on bass. It wasn't like, sure, go and get this little half bass, half pint. And it was like, here's the bass we have in the house and play that.
Right. I don't think he ever thought about me playing it because I was playing guitar. And at the time I was thinking about like playing guitar and singing. I wanted to be Lester Flatt, I wasn't thinking about being a bass player. It was a 3/4 K bass, is 1937.
Oh, right.
It's a really sweet instrument.
Which you still have and still play.
Yes.
And so, like, when was the first band you ever played in? How old were you then?
Oh, well, there was a band of neighbors, Tom Shroud and the Bluegrass Neighbors is what we were called. And it was mostly a family, the nucleus of a family band, and then some friends. I was one of the friends. And the family had a young daughter named Cassie, and she was just a little bit younger than me, but she already played mandolin and sang. And so I was part of that band. And then I started playing, and there was a gospel band I played in for a while in the area. I played in lots of other bands throughout my entire teenage years, all through high school. Let's just put it this way. I never went to any football games. I didn't go to I maybe went to 2 dances my whole thing. I did not go to my junior or senior prom. I was at bluegrass festivals for those events. So my world, it consisted completely and entirely around bluegrass at that time. I was playing in bars that I wasn't old enough to be in bands that entire time. So when I'd come back to school on Monday and I would listen to my friends talk about trying to get into some bar with fake IDs, and I was like, I just played 4 in 2 bars over the weekend. But nobody questioned me because I was like the kid that was supervised. Yeah, I grew up in a little place called Short Gap, West Virginia, but it was actually not that far from Pittsburgh, 2 hours or so. And it was just across the state line from Cumberland, Maryland. And so it's in that part of like the sort of the highlands. And the thing about where I grew up, throughout my whole life, people say, oh, you're from West Virginia and you have it in your blood. And there's so much roots music there. And they're not wrong. But I will have to say that during my time growing up there, I spent more time traveling to Washington, D.C. to play bluegrass. And that was in part due to the timing. It was like, this was like the 70s and early 80s. And bluegrass was on fire in D.C. at that time. And there were so many great, huge, influential bands that came out of that. And when I say D.C., I'm talking about everything from, Maryland, Northern Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Southeastern Pennsylvania, all of that whole what I call the mid-Atlantic section of the world. And there was just so much bluegrass going on there. So I spent a lot of time there as opposed to going deeper into West Virginia, in part because during that time, there was no interstate that connected one state to the other in the early 70s. So it meant going to Charleston or like the capital city or to any major city. It just took a long time. I mean, it took forever.
Yeah.
It used to take 8 hours to drive from Cumberland to Charleston. Now it takes 4.
Wow.
So it was kind of like regionally cut off from us.
So once you started expanding, let's say going out to the DC world, did it feel like bluegrass had a different flavor in those areas? Was it?
Oh, yeah. I think there's a distinct sound. Well, I should say that none of the artists that came out of there sounded like each other. So they all had their distinct personalities, sounds. But what they did share was a distinction from, say like the Stanley Brothers or folks who came from much more rural place, really. So you had bands like, the Country Gentlemen and the Seldom Seen and Johnson Mountain Boys and Bob Paisley and people like that who were coming out of that part of the world. And they all had their unique sound, but to me, it didn't sound like other bluegrass that you might hear. So,
of course, my next immediate curiosity is who were some really cool people that you got to play with during those times?
Well, there was a guy named Pat Shields, still around kicking and playing music. And he was one of my earliest mentors, gave me a lot of opportunity. But in those early days, I mean, I went to a lot of different festivals and got to jam with like folks like the Johnson Mountain Boys, and they, became good friends. And I got to meet my bass hero, Tom Gray, early in those days. In the early 80s, I got to sit in and actually sub for Tom with the Seldom Scene at the Birchmere. That was kind of a huge deal for me at the time. I was probably only about 20 years old. So it was pretty amazing. One time close to Pittsburgh, I sat in with Larry Sparks because he had just come to the venue and he didn't have a bass player. So he mentioned to the buyer, "Oh, I don't have a bass player. Can you recommend somebody?" And so because I had known other folks in the area who play music, they just called me up. And I, of course, just drove right up there and got to play with him. He didn't know who I was from Adam. That was probably in, I don't know, 83 or 4 or something like that.
But how wonderful that people were recommending you and already knew of you because you were still pretty young at that age. So I'm curious, were there women around for you to be either mentored by or that you were playing with? What was that scene like?
Yeah, I mentioned Kathy Shroud, who was my first buddy in a band, and she still plays today and is doing great things. There was a woman named Diana Haynes who played in the band with Pat Shields, and she played banjo. She was Maryland State banjo champion many times, and she is still such a great friend and a great player. There really weren't a lot of women that I was playing with and knew, because there just weren't that many women playing. That's a fact. But there were a few other women that I was seeing like on stage that I was inspired by. Not very many, not like today where you just like almost every band, you've got women fronting, being featured in these bands. But in those days, yeah, there was just a handful. There really wasn't very many at all.
Did that feel lonely at times, or was that even something that you thought about?
I mean, it was normalized at that time. It was like, oh, not only are you a kid, but oh, you're a girl. And so it definitely gave me this special feeling, which sometimes was good, sometimes was bad. But yeah, I don't know, as far as like not seeing other women, I wasn't old enough to be angry about it yet, I think. But I was sad about it, and I didn't understand it because I had come from a household where I was encouraged to just go after whatever I wanted to do. And so there was no one telling me I couldn't do anything. So in my mind, I was just like, well, I'm changing this. I'm going to go out here and do this. And I didn't even understand why a lot of women didn't have the opportunity, or I didn't know those stories because those stories weren't part of my world, meaning that it's not that I didn't hear comments that were not encouraging or whatever. It's not that I didn't hear those out in the real world. Of course I did. You're really good for a girl and all that stuff. I heard those, but I didn't pay them any mind. They just didn't have any weight to me because I didn't hear them from the people who mattered to me. So it didn't register as much. Once I really got out to the world on my own as a young adult, when you have less of your family there as your protector, then those comments started to become a lot more sort of tiring and get you down and just kind of make you think, oh gosh, what are we doing here? How do I fight this? And then I started to get much more angry about it and just more like ready to do battle.
Yeah. And so what would doing battle for you look like?
Just trying to speak up, trying to do things. But also for me, I felt more about my action. And so I just did things and I just wore what I wanted to wear. I tried to put myself in places that I wanted to be, even if they didn't want me there. It was a lot about that. And there was other things like I've traveled around with mostly men my whole career and in touring on the road with guys. And for the most part, I've had really wonderful experiences and great relationships with really good people. But always in those early days, there was a kind of mindset from some men that where they might be just super people, but they would say something maybe off color, and then they would always say, oh, sorry, Missy. Like I would be the one in the van because I was the only girl and they would have to apologize for, they'd have to edit themselves for. And that really bothered me. It didn't bother me that they were saying something off color. it bothered me that they were apologizing, which was making me feel like I was not part of the group. And I just wanted to be part of the group. I really did want to be one of the guys. Like, I didn't care if they said, oh, here, she's just one of the boys. I didn't care. I know I'm very comfortable with who I am, who I am as a woman. I don't have to have somebody say, oh, she's a woman or a lady or anything. That doesn't mean anything to me. I know who I am. I don't care if you call me one of the boys, just treat me like a musician. So as a result, the one thing that I did that I'm not sure was the right thing, and that was I actually started to say things that might be off color because I wanted them to know that I was okay with it. And I think that's a really crazy thing to have to do. And so all these years later, I am like the worst trash mouth sailor you're going to ever. I'm like the disgruntled road warrior, and I can cuss with the best of them.
It's so interesting because there's two dynamics. There's the I want to be accepted part, and then there's the like, if I wasn't here, would you be apologizing? This is always that boys will be boys thing. And it's not just about identifying men. It's about if you think you're in a group with people that agree with you, many things can be, quote, off color, right? It's not just about, it could be anything.
Right.
And so if you kind of know in the back of your mind that wouldn't be well received by other people who might hear, why are you saying it to begin with, kind of thing. I don't want to offend anybody, but it is interesting that they felt the need to apologize for something, and that then you were kind of like, well, let me make that person feel more comfortable too, because I'm just going to be one of the guys with them. It's kind of an interesting double dynamic there. And so there you were, just playing the bass, and then you started getting nominated for awards like IBMA Bass Player of the Year. I mean, I know there's a little journey between those two things, but what was that experience like?
There was a lot of travel across the country and internationally that I did, touring that I did between those times, playing in bars nearby my home and then starting to be nominated. So, and the other thing is I started being nominated, I'm not sure, I'd have to do the math, but at least 6, maybe 8 times before I won. I was nominated consecutively and every year and never won. And at that time, I mean, I had gotten to the point where I just believed that I was never going to win, but I was still very grateful that I was being nominated. I mean, I couldn't believe I was being nominated, to be honest. But then after about the 5th or 6th year, this ain't happening, but this is great. Like, I love it, but it's not happening. And then when it did, I really, truly couldn't believe it. And so then, I don't know how it felt. I mean, oh my gosh, I still think about it because it was just such a recognition. And there hadn't been any other women nominated in any other category except for banjo. Like Alison Brown had won Banjo Player of the Year, and she had won it in, I think, 92, which was early. These awards have only been going out since I think about 1990. And I won in 1998, my first year. So Alison had already won. So there had been a woman who had broken the ceiling already, but I was the second instrumentalist. And so it just felt like such a recognition. It did feel really good because I felt like I had worked so hard in that I'd been just touring and playing nonstop and trying to do everything I could. But I also felt really great about the fact, and this is going to sound weird, I don't think I've ever said this before, but that IBMA was honoring another woman. And even though it was me, but I mean, so that sounds very self-serving, but I don't mean it that way. But I have always been, ever since I've been a member of IBMA since the beginning as well. And I believed in it so much because it came at a time when we needed that sort of organization. These are things that I look back now and I realize that it was so great that IBMA was making these steps to become inclusive. And I was very excited about that. Of course, we've come even further in our inclusivity and all that since then. And all of that brings joy to me.
Yeah. And then you proceeded to win multiple years in a row or many times, right? How many times was it?
10.
10. Okay. Yeah, nice round number. And so what is it feel like, again, I've brought Vicky Fauna into this conversation already, that she definitely considers you to be an inspiration and her mentor. So how does it feel to see someone like that you've mentored win Bass Player of the Year?
It is a beautiful feeling. I don't have children, but if I did, I would want it to be Vicky. And I do appreciate when she says that I inspired her. I can't take any credit for all the things that she's done, but I sort of do. So that's what it feels like. I feel like the proud mom, like mom sitting out there and rooting her on. I mean, it just feels that good. And so it's amazing. It also feels great because I know what that feeling feels like, to have someone or several people that you've seen perform because you were caught up in the music from a young age, and you've seen them and you never forget moments that you saw them or you talked to them or something happened. I mean, I have probably a couple dozen of those moments of my life that all these different people affected me. Know what that feels like. To think that you could have done it in your own way, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, that stuff means everything. When you pursue something for a lifetime, it matters how you got into it and who nurtured or was a part of it, whether they knew or not along the way.
Yeah. And so I'm sure you've inspired many other, not just girls, but boys as well, about the bass with your beautiful bass playing. And so what are your current projects?
Well, I've been touring with this amazing band that I have called Allegheny, and it's a full-out bluegrass band. And we've recorded a couple of CDs in the last 2 years. So the most recent one just came out this spring, called Love and Trouble. And the one before that came out in spring of 24, called Highlander. And so I'm mostly just like touring with this band and playing with them. So I also have, I just recently accepted an artist in residence position at the East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, Tennessee for the 25-26 school year. And so I've been doing that, and that carries me to Johnson City every week when I can, when my touring allows it. And that's been amazing. So I'm working with students there and teaching bass and songwriting and composing and collaboration and all those kinds of things. And I'm absolutely loving that. And then occasionally I get to tour with different folks, one of them being Robbie Folks, who is an amazing, one of my favorite songwriters ever, singer, a guitar player with strong bluegrass roots, but is really a country singer. And I tour with him some, and gosh, what else am I doing? And, so I'm also really taking songwriting on pretty seriously these days. I'm always carving out time for that, both for my own project, but for other folks as well. And I've had a few successes with some cuts, with songwriting.
And so the CDs with Allegheny are original songs?
Not all of them, but there's always some originals on each CD that I did. And these produced by Allison Brown, and both of these last two CDs and one before. So, I worked for a long time with a great singer-songwriter named Claire Lynch. I worked with her for, of course, over about 12 years and recorded a lot of albums with her. She's such a great writer, and I learned so much from her. And one of the things that I remember, because she's a prolific and brilliant writer, and I remember we would record most of her own stuff, but then every now and then she would draw from some really great writers like Pierce Pettis or Tim Stafford or just any other folks that she thought were great songs. And I remember saying, why don't we just do all of your songs? And she said, sometimes those songs aren't the right ones for the situation or the album or the placement, or she said, or sometimes this song is better, And I remember thinking that is just a really great way to look at what you're doing instead of just pushing out your own stuff, even though I don't think I've ever heard her write a bad song, but she would have the idea that it was I'm just going to pick what's the best or choice.
This has been an amazing conversation. I very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I am a little envious that I can't be at East Tennessee State. I want to do that. I want to go there and get my bluegrass degree.
Oh, yeah, we should. I mean, you can come.
Well, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate having you on. Do you have a website where people can go and see where you're touring or see what you're up to, where to find your latest music?
Absolutely. That would be MissyRaines.com. It's RAINES.
Pretty darn easy. Well, thank you very much and appreciate having you on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome to Jam Talk. Today, Liz and I are chatting about good songs to call in the jam, what makes a successful call. I will be using the Easy Standards songbook as a reference. We'll see what songs in that book we like to call, and maybe there are some that are not in the book we'd like to call. So it should be fun.
And that is a songbook that you can download for free on my website, bluegrassjamsnearme.com/free songbook. So we're going to talk about some of the songs in there and why they're good to call in a jam.
Let's talk first, if you don't mind, about what makes a successful call. So there's a couple of things that make me want to call a song. One, as much as I know plenty of obscure bluegrass and other genre songs, generally speaking, I want to call a song I think people will know, be able to sing along if they know the lyrics and such. Two, and you've said this a million times, if it's got 8 chords in an unusual pattern and is crooked and has several minors and everything, it's just not going to work for me. So I tend to pick songs that have pretty straightforward chord progressions.
Yes.
And then there's songs I just like to sing, but mostly in a jam, those are the 2 main criteria. It's simple enough that people can learn it and they're likely to know it and enjoy having it played and singing along.
And I'm going to come back to both those things that you just said, but I'm also going to add my criteria for those of you, let's say, who are concerned that you won't be able to remember the words.
Right.
I like to pick simple songs that have repeating lyrics so that I can remember them. Because that seems to be an issue that we all have.
All right. So I'll go first. So what we're going to do is pick songs either that are in the songbook or if not in there, pick the song and then why is that one we want to go with. My first one is Jambalaya. Here's why I like it. Like I say, it uses both chords, the 1 and the 5. So it simply alternates back and forth between the 1 and the 5. A lot of people know it. Almost everybody can sing along with the chorus. Now, the Hank Williams version that I know only has 2 verses. So that's generally the one I use because that's probably the one most people know. So if I've got a lot of people who want to take breaks, I can always add in one more chorus at the end and have a couple of different spots. Incidentally, it's based on a Cajun tune, and I like Cajun music, called Grand Texas, which is almost the identical tune. But that's not why I would call it. I'd call it because it's very simple chords and very singable.
The other thing about Jambalaya is that it's easy to harmonize to.
Yep.
And that is great for people like myself, as you know, love to sing.
Right.
And it really gets people participating. And if you happen to have people sitting nearby, like in the park when we do sometimes, they too can sing along. So that makes for a very fun, upbeat song.
Yep. Okay, your turn, Liz.
Well, we talked about it being a song that people know. And there's a double-edged sword with that, because if it's a song people know, it might also be a song that is done too frequently. And so I do have in my songbook the songs that are done the most frequently of all songs in the world, which are, of course, I'll Fly Away and Will the Circle Be Unbroken. And those are amazing songs with incredible renditions by all sorts of awesome people. And I do not in any way want to discourage people from calling them because they're easy and people know them. But they are also done quite a bit. So I'm going to venture into a slightly different song genre, something like Bury Me Beneath the Willow. That is one of my favorite songs to call because you don't hear it as often in jams as you would think. And also, it's got 3 verses, easy to remember. It's a little story and people know it. And it's also good for harmonizing.
And it's got a tune that is pretty straightforward to play, the melody, the vocal melody. And therefore, people who may be a little bit hesitant to take a break probably are going to be able to pick it out and figure it out while other people are playing and then actually take a break on it. So that's another thing to recommend it.
Absolutely.
All right. So my number 2 is going to be Long Journey Home. Couple of reasons.
Okay.
It's, again, it's a 1-4-5 type of song, meaning it's got 3 chords, very simple alternation. And it, as you pointed out, it's got repetition. It's essentially, you say something like cloudy in the east, it sure looks like rain. And you say that 3 times and then Long Journey Home. And I think when you get those repetition type songs, it allows people to dive in and sing. It lets harmonizers pick a spot and experiment a little bit because they get to do it 3 times. So by the 3rd time, maybe they have a little bit of a flourish to add. And there's a very cool intro break that's normally played on the mandolin, but it transfers directly to the fiddle. So I enjoy introducing that song. And one last point is it's on a very popular Billy Strings album that he does with his father. So people who are sort of Billy Strings fans, but maybe not quite all the way into bluegrass might hear it and cock their head and say, oh, I could get into that.
Well, my next pick is actually picks following your lead in that. The 3 songs that I have in the songbook that repeat are Hand Me Down My Walking Cane, and the other one, My Home's Across the Smoky Mountain.
Yeah.
And that's only got 2 chords, good old 1 and 5 chords. So that is a good one as well. And then the third one of that is It Takes a Worried Man. Just repeats. Takes a worried man to sing a worried song, right? Just repeats over and over again. So if you need a little cheat sheet, you know, 'cause some jams frown on songbooks, but if you need a little cheat sheet, you can just write down the first line of each line, and then you've got your whole song.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love calling any of those songs. Now, I'll pick one song which I very frequently call Blue Ridge Cabin Home. And Blue Ridge Cabin Home for me is great. It's got 3 verses. It is a straight 1-4-5 rotation. It goes from 1 to 4 to 5 to 1 to 4 to 5 in a very steady, predictable. It's got one of the most inviting chorus sing-alongs. I love them hills of old Virginia. Everybody jumps in and starts singing that, and everybody's happy. And you know, when you get all those voices going, it's great when you're leading a song and the whole jam pipes up and starts singing along with you. So, and again, it's got a pretty straightforward melody, which is very playable. You can pick it out while you're listening to others play it and maybe take a break where you might not have taken a break before.
Yes. So now you may not be a singer, in which case you might want to call a fiddle tune. So what are some good fiddle tunes to learn? I do have a sampling of some very commonly played fiddle tunes in the back of this free download that you can get. For instance, one of those is Angelina Baker, which is really easy to lead because the A part and the B part are exactly the same for the people that are playing along. And so if you lose your place, it's not a big deal because you're just doing
right.
G, right? So it's just the same thing over and over again. So that one I find pretty much everybody knows. And my personal favorite fiddle tune, I like it because it's both words and instrumental, is Cripple Creek.
Right.
It's also pretty simple. It's mostly A.
Right.
And if you're a singer like myself, but you want to give people a chance to actually pick some breaks, and it's very quick. The A and the B part are very, very quick. So those are 2 fiddle tunes that I like to hear in a jam.
Yep. Those are 2 really good picks and very frequently called and often enough by fiddle players maybe who aren't, you know, Michael Cleveland or Jason Carter level and just want to be able to play a tune. Those are great to go with. So, Liz, you want to mention it again? Our listeners can get a copy of this?
Yes. bluegrassjams@nearme.com/free songbook. You can download it and use it, print it out, or put it on your iPad and study those songs. And I promise you, if you take any of these songs to a jam, people will know the song and be happy to play it with you.
Absolutely. It's a great resource, and I encourage people to get familiar with that song list. Okay, Liz, I think that's it. Great jam talking with you.
Yes, great jam talking with you too, Mike.
That was an amazing interview with Missy Raines. Liz, what really got me was she mentioned that she saw Diana Haynes on stage, and that kind of told her or inspired her that she could also be a woman musician and get out there and do it. And how many women bass players have we interviewed who have specifically said, I saw Missy Raines on stage, and they were inspired by her. And I just imagine that in 10 years, we're going to be hearing new bass players who have been inspired by people we're interviewing now. It's just a great generational community thing. Really, really inspiring.
And one of the things that really touched me about interviewing Missy also was her openness and authenticity. She was just so easy to speak with and really so deeply sharing about what her experience was, and especially that connection to her father and the bass that she still has.
Yep. But I got to say this, I do want to get her on a cursing streak one time.
Yes, that's true.
And of course, always
I'll believe it when I hear it.
Yeah, that's right. Come on, Missy. And it's always good to have a jam talk. It's great to go through those songs. We'll have another one soon, I hope.
Yes. Go and download that free songbook and go ahead and practice those. And I promise you, you will have lots of success leading songs in a jam.
Yep. If you can get those, you're well on your way.
Don't forget to subscribe and rate, and of course, share the podcast with all of your bluegrass loving friends, or all of your friends who don't know they love bluegrass yet, but will after they listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. Okay, so should we wrap this up, Liz?
Yeah, thanks so much for listening.
And we look forward to seeing you around the jam circle. And to take us out, we have Yanceyville Jail by Missy Raines and Allegheny from their album Love and Trouble.
And I've been in some trouble here today. Roll and tumble, tooth and nail. I ain't going to the Yanceyville jail. Yanceyville jail, Yanceyville jail. I ain't going to the Yanceyville jail.